we were on social media, I had over 20,000 site interactions.
Hi, Kyndra.
Hi.
I am so excited that you are joining me today. This is very exciting. Um, we chatted a little bit before the recording, so I guess like off air. And the last time we chatted, I had like a million questions that I wanted to ask you. So I'm really excited to jump in. Maybe we can start with you talking about the business that you currently own with your husband, because it's just really interesting. I've never heard anybody or met anybody in your industry. And I think it's just really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the company that I currently own with my husband is an industrial maintenance contracting company. So, we do a lot of work with sawmills, pulp mills, mines, oil and gas, kind of all of the industrial sectors, and kind of doing regular maintenance, but also installations, demolition, that kind of stuff. And so, we work primarily in British Columbia, but we've worked in Alberta a little bit. And then I think going into next year, we'll be working kind of all over the globe. So we do a lot everywhere, but we work a lot in our home city as well. So just a lot of industrial kind of applications. And then we do a little bit commercially as well. So we're all over the place with who we work with and kind of what we work doing for them.
Yeah, so each different contract that you get is for potentially different work just involved in that sort of like industrial space.
Yes, exactly. So we do a lot of stuff where sometimes it's contract work where we're in there for a set number of days and revolving each week for a couple of months or sometimes even longer, or not really having an ending date on that. And then other times it's you're here for a day or you're here for a month,
Hmm.
and so it's very versatile in kind of the amount of work we have and where and when.
I think that's so fun. It's different every time. It always keeps you guys on your toes. But I'm so
Yeah.
curious to know, what is it like working with your husband?
It's good. I don't think it's ever been an issue because we actually met working in a sawmill when I was a little bit younger. I was 3, 4 years ago. I was doing my schooling, and on the weekends they had a employment program through one of the sawmills where I was doing weekend cleanup work, and so he was one of the contractors coming in there, and so I ended up meeting him through that, and so our very first interaction was working in a space together. So going into owning a business together, we still were in a mindset where we had that experience together. We were worked very well as a team, and so it was never a challenge. And just going forward in our relationship and even just with the business, it's been a great process. I think you learn a lot about each other. And I actually saw once, there was this quote where, having a business together is that like one thing that's going to be like the make or break. It's
Mhm.
apparently easier than having kids. I don't
Yeah.
know that yet, but if you can have a business together, apparently you can have kids. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
think maybe it's going to
Because
work
I
for us like
think
that.
a lot of people, or a lot of like entrepreneurs, go into business either like with friends or significant others or family. And I know that there's challenges involved in that. Like, for example, like my brother and I are very different individuals. And so I feel like going into business together would be probably so hard because like we think so differently and we work so differently, but at the same time that might lend some balance in the relationship. But like, do you guys have ways where you keep things like very separated from each other, like at nighttime when you're done with work? Are you like, we don't talk about work? Or is it like not a problem if you guys are like, oh, you're brushing your teeth and you're like, oh, just thought about this for work?
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard that it's important to separate work and just like your personal life, but we are kind of in a space right now where we are so connected with our businesses and just like
Yeah.
focused on like a growth mindset that really like any point in the day, if I'm not with him, I'm texting him about it. If we are together and we're in bed late at night and it's like, oh hey, there's this thing that I wanted to bring up. And so it just goes easy for us, and I've
Yeah.
never had issues with separating it because I feel like it's such an important part in our life right now. Maybe in a couple years when we are at a space where we want to separate it a little little bit more or pull focus back on that, then we might do things like that. But really, I think it works really well for us now and helps us stay on the same page because we are very separate in certain things. Like he's out of town a lot and I'm working with my other business stuff. So the opportunities that we do have time together, I try to utilize that time.
Totally. I feel like I would be the same way. Like, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you like eat, sleep, and breathe your business. And to find space to separate them or to not, I feel like to ask an entrepreneur to not be thinking about their business at all hours of the day is like nearly impossible. And it's probably really nice to have somebody to talk to about it because he understands what you're going through. He understands what you're talking about. He understands your industry. And then like you guys can sort of support each other in that way. And I think that's really cool. And I'm curious to know because now the other business that you started, which I want you to talk about a little bit, was he involved a lot in that as well?
Yes, a crazy amount actually. So the other business, just for a little bit of preface, I started a mobile bartending company, and so it's the first in the city that I'm in, and one of the very first ones within our region. And so it's a mobile bartending trailer, and so it's a fully customized cargo trailer that's been fully redone to become a bartending station on wheels. And so I came up with the idea and needed to figure out how to do this, and he was right, all hands in, super hands on, helping me completely revamp the entire trailer and get it to a point where I was really happy with how it looked and just get it to where I was confident and being able to go out and look for work with it. And so he, I mean, it was free, so that was really cool. That saved a lot of money. And then just the process of like building it together was a really neat experience, and having him hands on with it and helping me throughout the whole process was really great for my business as well.
So, what was step one after you had this business idea? You were like, I think that this is a great space in the industry. We don't really have anything like that in the area that you're from. So, what was step one for you in terms of going from idea to like actual business?
Well, step one, I have a business background. So after I realized that there was a need for it, I was like, okay, well, let's make a business plan. And so it didn't take me very long to make the business plan because I was so like excited about the idea that I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit down and spend like my days doing this. So I think it really only took me 3, 4 days, maybe a week tops. And I had like a 20-page business plan that had everything in it that I needed from like, forecasting to a market analysis and every step in between. And so that was the next step. And then after that was just going and starting to get supplies. It was quick. I think I finished the business plan in January, maybe early February. And I just spent the next little bit looking for a trailer and then had a trailer by March and then was building it. So it was all really quick, came together fast.
When you were putting this business plan together, can you give somebody maybe who is, at looking to start step one and like, maybe what are some things that you think are really important questions to be answering in a business plan that like, if you can't answer these questions, you're probably not ready to start a business?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is always money. Financing and like trying to figure out ways that you're going to be able to bring your vision to life is super important. Of all of the experience that I have between, HR, marketing, operations, and finance is the one that I struggle with the most because that's not what I have spent my focus on. So making the financial plan was kind of a challenge for me, but it is the most important part of your business plan. So if you can kind of put together how you're going to source capital and what the major expenses are going to be, that's your like really like the pivotal kind of component, and then everything else is important. I would say maybe second most important is a market analysis so that you know your competition and what that's going to look like. And then being able to figure out your source ideal customer, your demographic, who you're going to be trying to sell to and what you want to accomplish with the look of your business and what it stands for.
You're in this early stage of your business and you are just coming together with a plan. You're like thinking through all of the steps to get to like a viable business idea. How do you think about like your expenses? Like, where do you think about that? Do you run through your business almost as if like you were thinking about it from the customer perspective? Are you running through maybe like an example scenario to be like, okay, well, in an ideal world, this is my clientele, this is what they're coming to do, and then like you sort of work backwards from there?
I think it was specifically a challenge with the bartending company because it was kind of a first of a kind in the community. So I had
Mm,
to do a lot of research in other provinces and other states as well, just to see what other people have done and what they kind of include in their packages and how the liquor laws and everything work. Because by
mm,
province in Canada, it's different. And so that was another thing that I really had to spend some time researching because I wasn't too sure what that looked like or what that even meant because I wasn't familiar with it prior to this. And so trying to figure all of that stuff out and then really just comparing what I wanted to do with the business to what
mm,
others had already done and then going and saying, okay, well, they've got packages that look like this. I think that it would be beneficial for my clients to be able to have these things as well. And then so kind of adding those in and putting a value on those. And then looking at other businesses that were in the community that were somewhat similar. None of them were mobile bartending trailers, but there was a couple bartending services where they would come to your house and or your wedding and just bartend from whatever setup you had. And so kind of checking and seeing what they had as well to do, a pricing comparison, but really it was a struggle because I had so much that was going on at the same time and not being sure, okay, well, is this too expensive? Is this too cheap? And really, I think that the thing that kind of solidified pricing for me and making sure that it was all right was people started buying it. And
yeah.
so, and then really, once I knew that, the prices were okay and that people were paying for it and it was affordable enough for my client base, okay, now I'm getting a crazy amount of events and people wanting to constantly book in. Now I have to increase my prices so that I get less inquiries, but more clients that are in my ideal demographic. And so I think that it all ended up working out, but it did take some time to get to that point and getting the expenses figured out and the business plan was kind of like you said, just working backwards, trying to see, okay, well, I'm going to need these things and these components to make this work. So now I have to kind of add that into the business plan and see what each event is going to look like and what my operating costs are going to be versus my cost benefits. And so, yeah, it took some time, but it all worked out in the end.
How did you get your first client booked?
So it was actually it was funny because I did a lot of like prior to going public within the community, I wanted to make sure that I had everything figured out from
Mm,
making sure just the process was very like smooth flowing, effective, efficient. The whole thing was planned out really nicely because I didn't want to go into it and have challenges like presented instantly, which happens either way. Like there's always going to be something new, but I wanted to make
right.
sure that I was prepared as possible and
Right.
make sure that I was ready. And
Yeah.
so I did some events for friends and family just to get things kind of flowing. And I did that. And then I went public on social media the first weekend in August. And I had, in the first 3 days that we were on social media, I had over 20,000 site interactions.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. And then from that, I had a booking every single weekend from the very first weekend in August to the middle to the end of October.
Holy shit.
So
How did you do that?
it was really like it just happened so naturally. I didn't expect it to be as busy as it was. And I kept telling my husband, like, I'm like, I don't know if it's gonna end up going so great with the community. Like, I don't really know what to expect. And there's always that like, what if it doesn't work? And he just kept reassuring me, like, no, this is like a great idea. Everyone's gonna love it. And so
Yeah.
first booking was this lady who had wanted to have a private event at her property. It was 40 people, really easy. She just was like, "Hey, come out. We want these custom cocktails." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then we went and set it up and did the event, and they were so happy. And them being the first ones in the community to get to enjoy that experience, they were huge on it. And now I've had them as return customers 6 or 7 times in the last 2 years. So. Yeah, they really liked it, and it shows with the service, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, this is so cool. So, like, this is everyone's ideal scenario. And I'm so curious to dig into it because, so, like, you're doing these events for friends and family, and are they spreading the word about you before you launch on social media?
a little bit, but really coming from a community that wasn't like this community that I'm in, Prince George, isn't my hometown. So, yes, I had lots of friends and family that were supporting it and spreading the word, but they were in different communities, so it wasn't
Hmm.
as beneficial as it would have been in my community. But as soon as it became public to everybody, we had like news outlets that were talking about it. I had like hundreds of people resharing the posts and everything and starting to follow us. So it wasn't as much friends and family as just the amazing support group that Prince George has, and how helpful everybody is in trying to help those small businesses really
Hmm.
thrive.
So, what did your social media posts look like? Because I'm so curious.
It was literally just a I had staged like a little event for my with my mom and my aunt and then a couple of my cousins in my auntie's backyard, and had the trailer set up, and they were just clinking glasses and laughing, and it was one of those candid photos where I wasn't even trying to get them to pose, but they thought they were being silly, and so I got a photo of them doing that and then put the post up and said like, cheers to Prince George's first mobile bartending trailer. And then people were like, oh my God, where can I rent you? How can I book your services? And that was that easy.
Genius. And then you said you had news outlets covering you guys as well. Was that something that you had done ahead of time?
No, no, they had reached out to us
What?
themselves. Yeah, that was pretty
That's
cool.
amazing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that is so cool. I think this really highlights like the the importance of finding the right place for your product. Like you really realize that there was nothing at all like this in that community and that they were not only like lacking it but they really wanted it and it was something that they really needed and then like it's almost like that simple, right? It's like you provide a great service in a place that really needs it and really wants it, and then like with your excellent service it just like knocked it out of the park like immediately. It was just a huge win, and I think that's so great because I think a lot of people like I think it's hard when you have a great idea but you also like don't necessarily know where it fits in, and I think that that's a super important portion that you really can highlight in this moment is to say, we had the right idea at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. And the right time was super important too, because we had just come out of COVID. So many people were lacking that social interaction that they wanted. They wanted to get back out and spend time with their friends, but maybe we're still a little bit reluctant to go out into public spaces. And so we really hit a market where we come to you. And so that was something that I think not only with the mobile bartending kind of stuff, but you see a lot of, automotive shops that are come to your house and change your tires now and do your oil, or hairdressers and other
Mm.
services. Now that there's that customization and that ease of access to those services, that kind of industry I think is going to boom in the next couple of years just because people are able to get things that come to them, and that's really appealing to a huge demographic of people.
Totally. Are you guys looking to expand now? Like, are you looking outside of Prince George? Or are you pretty cozy in that space?
Yeah, so our we've kind of expanded our services already from just bartending to wedding and event planning to rental services, and then we also have our own custom cocktail line. So
Oh,
within
cool.
our service offerings, we have a bunch of different things that are happening, but we've had a lot of requests for outside of our region as well. So we have a wedding that we're doing that's 10 hours from the
Wow.
city we're currently in, and then a lot of other smaller communities that are within the region but an hour's drive or a couple hours away. They've hired us for events for next year already, so we have expanded that way. Hopefully in the next couple of years we'll have another trailer, and then our services will be expanded even further, and then maybe all across BC and maybe into another province. We'll see, but I'm very open to a lot of growth.
I'm excited about this custom cocktail line. I would like to know more about that because that sounds really fun.
Yeah, so we don't have our own like alcohol line. That's not really what it is, but it's basically we've taken recipes for different kinds of cocktails. We have a sangria, a raspberry margarita, a strawberry daiquiri, and then a couple more that are just seasonal ones that we've kind of created for the fall. And basically the idea behind it is you take the cocktail kit, add your choice of alcohol, and then shake it up, let it sit for a couple of hours, and then you go back to it and it's a pre-made cocktail. So they're super popular within the city, and I've had a lot of people that serve off of their shelves for us, and we have a couple,
Whoa.
yeah, wholesaler agreements. So yeah,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
they've been hugely popular.
That is so, so smart. I think, like, how did you know to do that? You were like, okay, I have this really great business. It's a trailer. We come to you. And then you were like, wait, there's also an opportunity for us to expand wholesale and reach out to local bars and have them host our like cocktails. I just, how did you have that? Like, what was that light bulb moment like?
Well, I liked the service portion of everything. Like, I really enjoyed getting to work in a service industry, but I also really see the potential with products and how easy it is to kind of expand, especially when you're working on building your brand. And if you have a couple products that you can sell for marketing and for promotions and everything, and even just in certain cases after weddings or big events, we like to give our cocktail kits as like a thank you for having us hired. And I liked the idea of being able to give something to our clients to say we really appreciate you having us here, and people loved it so much that they said, hey, where can I get these, and kept going, we want more, we need more. And so then it was like, okay, well, we'll start selling these kind of on a bigger scale and with more people involved. So that was kind of the moment. It wasn't something that we intentionally were like, oh, we're going to start a cocktail line. It was like, okay, well, we've done this a couple times and people love it, so let's build from it.
Oh, that's such a great point. I think that's probably another reason why you guys are consistently successful is your customer service to be like, thank you for hiring me. Like nobody does that. And I think that's such a nice personal touch that really, I'm sure, sets you apart on a regular basis from like any other service based company, like ever.
Yeah, I hope so. That was kind of the
That's
idea, and
pretty
not even
genius.
really from like a what we gain from it, but really just saying like we appreciate you supporting a small business.
Oh, that's so cool. So you mentioned that your background is in business, and I kind of want to go back like even further. Have you always been entrepreneurial, like ever since you were a little kid, or was it something you loved like in college?
It's funny because I have a lot of family that owns businesses. When I was 4 years old, my grandparents owned a bar in a really small community that I was growing up in, and I would go down there every day or every weekend or whatever and just kind of help out like during the day as a 4 year old behind the bar kind of thing. And my grandparents tell a story constantly to like anybody that comes into the house that's new and say, well, yeah, she's been an entrepreneur forever. Like when we had the bar, she would go up to tables at 4 years old and ask them what they wanted and pretend to write down their order. And then, before she even left the table, she's like, where's my money? So
I
they
love that.
yeah.
I love that. So you kind of have always been entrepreneurial. So when college came around, were you like, okay, yes, I know exactly what I want to do?
Well, it was actually really funny because as much as I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit and like growing up seeing that within my family a lot, I didn't really know what I wanted to do once I graduated. And it was actually not until I graduated and then I spent a year working at the local sawmill just to kind of save up, figure out what I wanted to do. And then that summer, just before I was kind of figuring out what I was going to go back to school for, there was a forest fire in my community, and my family, like, we had like three cop cars pull into our driveway at like 11:30 at night and said you have 15 minutes to evacuate and get out of here. And so we ended up grabbing the dogs, grabbing the cats. My dad had to stay behind because I grew up on a farm, so he was with the livestock and cutting down trees around the house and everything. But for the next 2 years or two not 2 years, next 2 weeks, we spent the time as evacuees and would get calls from my dad with like a video calls, like FaceTiming us with like you could see the fires over the hill, and it was only at one point it was only a kilometer from the house. So
Wow.
we kept, we were like, oh my God, are we gonna have a home to return to? Like, is what's gonna happen here? And so I really hated the feeling of being like helpless in that situation, and I was not happy about it. And so initially I was like, hey, well, I'm going to go back to school so that I can develop skill sets, so that I can build businesses that help with these services and help find resources that can help support these natural disasters and like initiatives that are going to support rural and northern communities. And so that was why I went back to school. And initially, I was going to start my own like water tender company so that I could support the forest fires. And then after going through school and spending a couple years, it kind of transitioned into just what kind of opportunities were available, and
Yeah.
with the mindset of still supporting rural and northern communities.
So what I'm curious also, what was your did you ever have like a dream job as a little girl? Like were you ever like, oh, when I grow up I want to be this?
It's funny because I never really had a specific dream job. I wasn't gonna be a doctor, or, like I didn't think about stuff like that, but I knew that I wanted to be something where I was my own boss and that I could make the rules. And I spent a lot of time when I was younger in leadership roles. I was the captain of my volleyball team and I was my grad class president. And so I loved having those kind of experiences where I could lead a team and collaborate and work with people to create better scenarios and situations.
Totally. I have this theory that all of our dream jobs as little kids is like really either, what we, if you, here's my theory, like if you follow your heart and you do what you are excited about and what like jazzes you up, it's almost always what you wanted to be when you were a little kid. Like
Yeah.
somehow, some way, it always goes back to like your original dream when you were a little kid.
Yeah.
Like for me, I had it when I was little, like I really wanted to be like famous or something. Like I told my parents I wanted to be like a pop star, or like I wanted to do something like that would be somewhat in like the public eye. And now that I do like podcasts and social media, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And to hear that your dream job as a little kid was to be your own boss, and then now here you are doing that, it's kind of like, I'm onto something, I think.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that too, because I don't know if you guys did it, but in our province we have this thing called grad transitions, and so our grade 12 year we have to go up to like a panel of like teachers and like community members and kind of say like our plans for the future. And
Interesting.
I didn't know what I wanted to be. Yeah, it's a quite an interesting process. Like you have to tell them like your biggest accomplishments and a bunch of other stuff, but the main component of it is what your plan A and plan B are for careers. And my plan A was being in forestry, and my plan B was being a wedding planner. And I joke about it because I'm currently in forestry and I am also a wedding and event planner. So I
Oh
got
my
my plan A
God.
and my plan B. Yeah.
You are doing both of those things. That is
Yeah. And it was
so
totally
cool.
a coincidence. Yeah. It was unintentional, but it ended up working out that way. And it is exactly what I guess I knew I was going to do.
I think noticing through all of these different stories you've been telling me, like it really seems like you've always sort of just gone with your gut and you weren't too worried about like sticking to that plan per se. It was like you just sort of in each moment were like, okay, well, here's what I want to do now, and here's what makes sense. And then, when you started your mobile bartending business, it also came out as a result of a need that you saw in the industry. Like you were planning your own wedding and you're like, ah, there's nothing like this. And then that's how you got started here.
Yeah.
And I think this is an important point because I think a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes lose that desire to like follow their heart and follow their passion, and that's I think like where the magic happens. And I think it's clearly served you like very well through your whole experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It has this whole time just being able to have a very like, and unintentionally too, just a vision and like a plan, and things just line up really well for me, I guess.
I think that's a good point though, is like I tend to find that when I talk to people, it's like when you have an idea, particularly one that is what I think people would consider like synchronistic in some way. Like to me, that's an indication that you're on the right path, that it's sort of like, okay, yes, you have this idea that's really exciting to you that you want to build, that you want to make, and you start to build it. And then when the opportunities continue to arise around that idea, it's like the universe is almost telling you, like, yes, like you are on the right path, like keep going, keep pursuing it. And like that has been almost your guide throughout this. And then to have your first launch be like incredibly successful is almost like another indication that's like, yes, like you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing. And have you ever had some like experiences throughout this process, either with your mobile bartending business or your guys' industrial business, where you were like, either there was like a moment when you trusted your intuition and you were like, something either doesn't feel right, or you're like, I think that this might be the right move, and maybe sometimes somebody was like, oh, I don't know about that, and you're like, no, no, I know that this is right, and you did it anyway and it worked out for you, or maybe the opposite?
Yeah, actually, when we started wanting to do event coordination and plan weddings and corporate events and stuff like that, I was told that it's better to stay in your lane and to focus on your niche instead of expanding. And I thought about it and was like, yeah, like it's a great thing, but it also complements our business very nicely because of what it is that we're doing. And I found that even when we were doing the bartending services for weddings and other events, we were asked so many questions about, oh, can you do this? Or how do we do this as well? And it was like, well, if we're doing the work, we might as well be getting paid for it and being able to specialize in those things so that we can offer more full service kind of experiences for our clients. And so I decided to take the leap and do it, and it went really well because of how well it complemented our services and the kind of experience that it was able to give our clients.
Absolutely. There's nobody who knows your business better than you. And
Yeah.
particularly in your case, when you're in a situation where you're in a city or a town that has such a need for your business and you're kind of dominating the industry in that way, it's much easier, I think, for you to expand and like get out of your lane or whatever, because you own the street, like that's your area and your business. And it's like there's so much opportunity for you, like you might as well expand while you have the opportunity to. And especially if your clients are asking for it, it's kind of seems to me like a no brainer.
Absolutely. Yeah. It made total sense to me and it worked out fantastically for being able to improve it.
Yeah, it's definitely a lesson to be like, no, no, no. I think a lot of new entrepreneurs will get a lot of input from a lot of different people, especially when they start talking about their business with other people. Like opinions are just going to be rolling in left and right. And it's important in those moments as the business owner to A, trust your intuition, and also B, like you know your business better than anyone will. And you also have more incentive for it to succeed than anybody else, and like the passion to want it to succeed. And like those two things combined almost are like your superpower. And that like sure, like there's going to be mistakes along the way, it's inevitable, and learning lessons, but at the same time, if you feel like there's an opportunity that maybe somebody else doesn't see, like trust yourself and trust your gut. And speaking of that, like what were some of the challenges that you guys faced, or like maybe like mistakes that you made along the way? Because I'm sure that there has to be something, right? I feel like there's always.
Yeah, it's funny because we haven't had a whole lot of really challenging situations, and like I feel almost guilty about it because you get, right? Like you get so many business owners and entrepreneurs that are like telling you stories from the trenches and are like, this went wrong a million times before it went right. And yeah, I've had like some hiccups. Like there's been very minor things where it's
Yeah.
like, you know, this didn't go very well, so we're gonna adjust it for the next event. But it was like nothing that's been so like pivotal for our company that it's really had any great effect on things. And so I like I said, I feel guilty about it not being so bad. I'm sure that the longer that our businesses go and the more that we kind of expand and different opportunities that we go towards, there will be things that we obviously don't anticipate and, barriers and challenges around things. But I have a really really strong team and we work really well together. And so I'm not really worried about those challenges because I know that we as a team will be able to face them head on and work around them in like a really strong way. And so I'm not worried, but I don't anticipate that there'll be challenges that we can't overcome.
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think two things. One is that you built a really strong support system and team around you, which I'm assuming is uh, is full of individuals who complement your skill set. So where you understand your weaknesses lie, you've hired other people to fill those spots. So then you're sort of well rounded in that way. And I also imagine that you are excellent at preparation. With your 20-page business plan, it seems to me like you really take the time to think through your business 360 degrees. You really think about any of the what ifs and then you anticipate them and you make sure that those are built into your business model and your team's way of working. So then that way you're just anticipating problems before they even arise, and then that way if they do arise, it's at that point not a problem because you've already addressed it and you found solutions for it ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head with that. Like, absolutely, my team is fantastic. We work very well together, and we are all extremely type A.
I love
So there's nothing that we don't plan ahead for. And then even the things that we don't plan ahead for, we always have a backup plan and an emergency kind of, this is what we do if this doesn't work. And even when there's things that come up that we didn't fully anticipate, because we work so well together, hey, this is a problem. How do we fix it? We've got a solution in no time. And it's almost like the problem never even happened.
Yeah, I think this is a great lesson in understanding your strengths and weaknesses and then creating a team around them to complement your skill sets. And also, like that, I think what you said was to ensure that you guys are a well-oiled machine. You work well together, truly. Like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, like you all understand your roles and responsibilities and you are all willing to step up to the plate and be like, okay, I got this, or like I need you to do this, or that maybe you go over there and do that and I'll handle this and take care of it. So like if there's ever a situation, you guys are like full on in prep mode and you're like handling it no problem. And yeah, your ability to plan ahead is pretty mint. I think that's amazing. And it's really truly testament to the fact that you guys really haven't had any major issues because you've been so thoughtful about any scenario that could go wrong in your business, which is an important lesson for I think everyone to learn from.
Yeah, exactly. And I struggled with that early on in the start of the business was I had a hard time delegating. I was like, okay,
Mm.
this is my baby. I need to do everything because it needs to be done right. And once I started bringing on my team members, I realized that me doing everything is not beneficial because it's taking up way too much of my time when I could be looking into new leads or working on projects that suit my skill set. And so when I had my first two team members join, I was like, okay, well, I sat down and had a conversation. And it was them that brought it up and were like, hey, you need to let us pick up some slack because I'm really good at doing this and I'm really good at doing that, and so let us do those things so that you can focus on other things. And then I was like, you know what, yeah, that makes total sense. And then after that started happening, I realized that I was way less burnt out and that we were getting more work because I wasn't the only one that felt like I was competent in doing these things. So it made a huge difference.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another testament to you to have hired people and you create an environment with which they are confident enough to get on the phone with you and be like, let us help you. Like let us do the thing that you hired us to do. And they weren't worried about it at all. In fact, they were like, you need to do what you need to do and let us do what we need to do. And so what was that? Was there like a moment when that conversation happened or like what was going on in the business when they were telling you this?
I think just growth. Like it wasn't so much like a moment in time that it was like, okay, I'm doing 12 things and they're all going wrong. It wasn't anything like that where they were seeing that I was way too loaded up with stuff. It was just they realized that there was a lot more capacity for us to be able to bring in new projects and work on new things. And so they were like, we understand these things. You've trained us to do them well. So if there are different paths that you want to start focusing on, or different opportunities that you can bring into the business and then teach us how to work with, then we can do it like that. And that way, these new things that you're bringing them in your way, and you can make sure that they're created exactly in your image and how you want them done, while we get to focus on and maintain the current services and products that you're providing, because we already have learned how to do that. And so that made a huge difference, because we were able to actually kind of I was able to build things in the way I wanted to have them done, and then they were able to continue to boost those things up.
Yeah. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to either start the idea that they've had for a while, or like they're in the early stages of getting their business off the ground? What would you tell them?
I think something that I always go back to is mentorship. And I have had some incredible mentors over the last couple of years that have really been able to open my eyes to new ways of doing things, or different aspects of like oversight that I hadn't seen, because I was so focused on tunnel vision, get this done, make sure it's done well. And so having people that have had a lot of experience, or maybe are even in different industries, but just have been entrepreneurs or business owners for many years, and have those stories that they can tell you, or those pieces of advice that are really going to benefit you in a different way. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's directly related to your current business, but it could be something that, maybe is a an idea or a concept that you weren't planning on even considering before.
Yeah.
And so opening your mind to things, and having those mentors that can kind of guide you through that experience is huge. So absolutely find a mentor that is going to be able to help you develop your skill set and look at things in a new way, but also just following your passion. That's been my biggest thing. I've had a vision for years of just making sure that rural and northern spaces in British Columbia have access to resources. And that has been the overarching idea that I have continued to develop with my schooling and going into my businesses and everything. And because I'm passionate about it, regardless of how much workload it is, or how many things get thrown in my path, I just keep going, because it's something that I want to see flourish. And so follow your passion and find a good mentor.
How did you find your mentors?
Well, my very first mentor was actually my grandparents, because they have had many businesses. And so just going to them and saying, "Hey, Nana, like, how do I do this? What were your experiences and your challenges with it?" And then, they are quite a bit older, so their perspective on things might be a little bit outdated, but still
Mhm.
their experience is stuff that, regardless of the time that you were born, or the time span that you have had a company, is
Yeah,
still really relevant information. And
totally.
so made a huge difference having those support systems. Absolutely.
And then, so how would you recommend that like someone find a mentor? Because personally, for me, finding a mentor has always been really challenging. Because like either like in college, I never really connected with a professor, and like my parents are entrepreneurs as well, but like it's hard, I think, with parents because they have their own expectations and ideas for you of how they want you to succeed, or like what their version of your happiness looks like, and it might differ from yours particularly. So like for me, I've always struggled with finding somebody that I connected to in terms of a mentor. What would you do? You have any like advice for that? Do you, or like was there one that you found outside of your family?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started my businesses, I wanted to network and
Mm.
network and network and network, because I knew that there's so many different opportunities that come from networking with, new leads to work, partnership potential, mentorship. And I've found that all of those things have happened from networking. If you
Mm.
go to conferences that are relevant to your industry or the kind of things that you want to learn about, or even, luncheons, or start working with a nonprofit that supports small businesses and entrepreneurs, stuff like that, they have lots of different meet and greets and kind of stuff like that where you can go and network. And I found that going to these spaces and doing these things, regardless of if you're, a confident person and outgoing, I've had no struggle with that because I really like meeting people. But I know that lots of people don't necessarily have those same, courage, or you're not even courage, but just like are a little bit more reserved and scared to go out
Totally.
there and talk to people. But I think it's so important as someone who's working to build your business and build your brand and start growing yourself and your company, that you need to go out and have those experiences networking. And so much comes from that you'll find a fantastic mentor after the first couple of meet and greets that you go to, if not the very first one. So that's
Yeah.
definitely a spot that you can look into for sure if you're looking to
Yeah.
have a mentor.
And I think something interesting too that you said about whether you're like introverted or extroverted. I'm kind of a weird mix of both, where like once I get to know somebody or like we're chatting like one on one, I think I'm like pretty extroverted. But in like a large crowd of people, I think I tend to like hang back and listen more. I'm not like the one like shouting above the crowd. And the first like founder networking event that I did prior to like my blog and podcast going live, because I wanted to reach out and like get interviews and start talking to other people in my area. And speaking from experience from like an introverted perspective, the hardest part about that is just getting there. Like the whole day I was just wondering like, oh, should I cancel? Like, should I just not go? Maybe like nobody's going to care if I don't go. So like maybe I just won't go. And so the whole day I'm going back and forth being like, no, go, go, don't go, go. And then like by the time I got there, and like it was so awkward at the beginning because I got there way too early and it was like just me and like a couple of other people. And I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But then by the end of it, I ended up making a friend and like he and I got drinks afterwards and we just chatted like the whole night away. So like if an introvert is listening to this episode, just go. Like just get there, get to the event. Don't worry about what comes afterwards. Just like show up and then let the rest do the work for you because as you said, like it'll work. It'll happen, like you'll get there. You just have to show up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And really, too, like people that are going to these events, everybody wants to network. Everybody is nervous. Everybody doesn't know what's going on, regardless if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Like the people that are going to these events, they want to make connections. And
Yeah.
so if you're going and you're scared that you're not going to meet anybody or people aren't going to want to talk to you, they absolutely are.
Yeah.
So just take the leap and do it and try it.
Yeah,
It's
you're
so
right.
worth it.
It's kind of impossible to go to like a networking event and then like not meet somebody from that networking event since that's exactly what it's designed for.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Well, that's, I think, a great place to end on. I think that's great advice. And I super, super appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I think this has been a really cool episode. There's a lot of nuggets in there for people to take away. And I am so grateful that I got to meet you. And I can't wait to see where your businesses go because I'm going to go follow you on social media. Oh, with that, why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn and just, ask for advice or whatever, connect, network, if you say, my LinkedIn is Kyndra Farrell. And then, if you want to reach us on social media, Worth a Shot Mobile Bar, we've got our website. And then through our website, you can find all of our links to everything for our social media. And then our millwrighting company is True North Millwright Services. So you'll be able to find our website and social media through that as well.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.